Hello, my friends on YouTube. Today is Sunday, the 11th of April 2021, and I would like to talk to you today about the impact of 1973 war on the Islamic, the Socialist world, and on us today. Many people even may have not even heard of that war of 1973 and why it has any significance. The war of 1973, it was between the nation of Israel and three Arab nations, Syria, Jordan, and under the leadership of Egypt. However, this war was not the first war between the nations, or the nation of Israel and other Arab Islamic nations. It started actually, I want to avoid certain words because I'm about to be taken out of YouTube. I got a strike about one video, even though it was an old one, and I've been warned before, so I don't want to give them a chance to take me down. So 1400 years ago, there was an ideology that I'm sure you understand what ideology this is. It propagated the hate for the Jews, the Christian, and the rest of humanity. Anyone who does not agree to this ideology ought to be killed. And since this is planted deep in these kind of in the people who believe in this ideology, uh, Israel is a target always, since they were in Arabia 1400 years ago. Now, after World War II, the Jews suffered tremendous atrocity and hardship under Hitler. They were massacred. And to put myself in their position, I want kind of like have a better life for my people. We want safety. We don't want to be always under the risk that a crazy person come and start slaughtering us or burning us in oven all the time. And therefore they established the State of Israel 1948, just 3 years after World War II ended. At this time, they found resistance from the Palestinian and from the Egyptian and all the Arab Islamic nations, but they met the Arab nations were surprised by the qualification of the Israeli soldier back then, even though it was a young state. Now, later on, that dream was not gone to eliminate the Jews from the area. So in 1956, Egypt attacked Israel once again, and Britain and France came to the aid of the Israelis, and the war ended. Of course, America interfered. Anyway, that's a long subject. It's not our issue now. In 1967, under the same Egyptian president, he had the notion that he even though he was a socialist, communist, and many people say he was an atheist, however, that notion of destroying the nation of Israel was kind of like inherent in his soul, inherent nature in his soul, that he wanted to destroy the nation of Israel. So in 1967, he had the idea to gather the other Arab nations who have border with Israel and destroy them, together destroy Israel. At this time, the Israeli intelligence understood that, and therefore on May 5th, I'm sorry, June 5th, 1967, simultaneously, the Israeli Air Force bombed all airports and airplanes and all the aviation military of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, render them obsolete, all of them. And within 2 days, they managed to destroy all the three armies within a couple of days. That was called the War of the Great Defeat. President Nasser died 1969 and came to replace him President Sadat. In 1973, President Sadat decided he wanted to fight again, and I am not sure his intention was, because he was not really following in the footsteps of Nasser. Not 100%, he was totally different character. So he agreed with the Jordanian as well as the Syrian to fight again. It's a long story. I don't want to go into detail, but the Israelis somehow, even though they had some information, the general, I forgot his name, who was supposed to take action, somehow he disregarded, or he got distracted and he didn't look at the note that it was given to him. Hence, uh, on October 6, 1973, the three armies of Egypt, I'm sorry, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan attacked Israel. It lasted 6 days. It was called the 6 Days War. It was a very violent war, but it lasted only for 6 days. And these 6 days changed human history, in my opinion. And the reason here why is because oil. In the 1960s, the demand on oil started to become more consistent, and people depended on oil. In 1950s, very few people owned cars. Not every family, even in America, which is a very affluent nation, not every family in America in 1950s owned a car. In the 60s, it started to become an average family. Each family would have a car. In the 70s, even if you have an 18 years old son or daughter, the parents will have a car or two, and the children, once they become adult, they will have their own car. So, and the aviation system and the transportation between nations, it became, the oil became very vital for driving the economy. And I'm talking about oil because when the war started, all the Gulf producing all the Gulf nations, producing oil nations in the Gulf region, they decided to stop pumping oil to Europe and to America, to the nations that supported Israel or they stood by the side of Israel. So that was the first time oil was used as a weapon. And for those of you who are above 50 years old, I'm sure you would remember 1973 when people would stand in line to buy fuel for their cars. It was a very difficult time in America and in Europe. At this time, uh, America, as well as the Arab nations, understood that oil can be used as a weapon. So, on part of the West to can create balance uh, during President Nixon administration, uh, they enter into the European Americans and the Americans enter into agreement with the oil producing nations that oil will be sold only using dollar. So if, for example, Japan needs to buy oil or China, they must pay for it using US dollar. So that will give America, number one, it will give benefit to both. It will give America kind of like strength to all over the world, economic strength, but also it gives the oil producing nations strength to determine the price of oil and so on and so forth. So oil became like a bargaining chip, if you will. And after this war, when they decided to pump oil back to America and Europe, I am not sure how much the price of oil was and became, but I believe it tripled in price. It tripled. Now, this became a very interesting situation because first America got benefit that all the oil is traded by dollar. It created a lot of America can at this time print a lot of dollars to cover the need for buying all oil. So in a way, America got richer, but also the oil producing countries became more wealthy because the price of oil it became tripled. So uh, they made a lot of money at this time. And if we remember, at this time, the Muslim Brotherhood, the organization started to actually become strong. And the reason is President Nasser, they wanted to kill him and take over the country, over Egypt and the Middle East and North Africa and the whole region. So he kicked them all out of Egypt. Some went to jail, went to prison, and some were kicked out. So they went to Saudi Arabia at this time, and they were financed by the Saudi in Saudi Arabia, and they became militant there, and they started to travel to other countries in Europe, in America, build mosque, and took roots in the West. Because there is a lot of money coming. The supply is coming. People more buying oil more and more, there is more income. And despite of the human violation by Human Rights Watch in the Gulf region, I mean, until now in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, these countries literally they buy and sell human. especially coming from Mauritania, North Africa. Literally. It is not openly, but still, they still have it. You can Google, they still have slavery going on. A lot of money, they are doing whatever they want. And because America and the European countries, they don't want to jeopardize their relationship with the oil producing countries, they look the other way and they let the violation happen. Recently, a couple of years ago, it was the murder of the John. It's not that I agree with that guy. He was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Saudi journalist, his name is Jamal Khashoggi. America had to look the other way. Anyway, is not the issue now. But that uh, money that it was produced because of oil and agreement, it was a result of this war, 1973. Now, this, in a way, it had some good, some positive, but also some negative. And that uh, we are facing today. In 2011, during the Arab Spring, we remember that Europe opened the gates for the flood of migrants who ran away from this region. Some of them were really sincere and honest people who were persecuted by the Islamic group, ISIS, Al Qaeda, and all there are many other groups. They were murdering them. I, with these people, I am with them 100% that they should actually seek refugee status in other countries. They should leave. However, with them went also sleeper cells. And I am very sure many of the European leaders knew that very well. But it is good for them because it's good to have somebody in case if the people do not do what the politicians want them to do, they can use these thugs to intimidate. Today in America, we see a very similar situation. The opening of the border in the southern part of the United States. And it's not only people coming from Honduras, Guatemala, or Mexico, but some coming from Russia. Some are jihadi, Muslim jihadist, uh, some Chinese, and some of them Chinese agents. And each one, as long as you pay the price that it is determined, I believe the Arabs, they have the highest price, I think over $9,000. They get you in. There are gangsters that they get you in. And this is happening for the very same reason that it happened in Europe about 10 years ago, so that they can have people in case if the government issue certain order and the people do not comply with it, then they have these people to intimidate. The difference with America, that America has the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, for those who don't know it, it is the right to bear and keep arms. Most homes in the United States of America, most Americans have weapons, guns, firearms in their homes. And therefore, should these thugs come to intimidate people, there's a very good chance that citizens will shoot at them. Hence, the Biden administration a couple of days ago, this just to get to where we are today. I really don't think Biden knows clearly what he is doing. I honestly don't. I think the handlers, many people call the people who are telling him what to do, are called his handlers. Probably in particular, Obama and his vice president, Harris. So you have a sloppy Joe, just a paper president doing what others are telling him to do. He started to speak about eliminating the second. He's kind of like giving the notion or pioneering to that, laying the ground that we have to get rid of the Second Amendment. Why you want to get rid of the Second Amendment? They call it buyback. They want to buy all the guns from the citizens. Why do you want to do that? So that the citizen will not have teeth. They will not have anything to fight with. They will not be able to stand up against these thugs. This is what happened in Venezuela. This is what happened in North Korea. This is what's happening in China today. The Chinese people cannot stand up to tell the Chinese Communist Party not to do anything or this is wrong. They cannot because they will be crushed. We all remember 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. The people have tried. Tank went down in the streets and soldiers, military people with machine guns, spray people with bullets. Some people they say tens of thousands were killed. Some say it's in the hundreds of thousands. It's a secret. We will never know, at least at this generation. Now, Saudi Arabia, I'm sorry, the former Soviet Union collapsed. Before its collapse, it was having a very hard time also economically. It was almost dry, but on the surface, it looked like a huge empire. Many people they say if it weren't for the war of 1973, the Soviet Union would have already collapsed in the 70s. What happened? For many people actually they don't know that Russia in particular, the whole former Soviet Union had a lot of oil, but specifically Russia has more reserve oil than Saudi Arabia. And they use most of this oil because they are a bigger country and they need more oil for heating because it's a very cold country. But they still export a lot of oil to Europe. And therefore, the money was coming again 3 times as high in dollar, in US dollar, in hard currency. That gave them a reviving breath to continue. They continued until 1989, actually 87, but totally collapsed 1989, which not really so far from 1973, or if they were supposed to collapse 1975 to 89 is not a whole lot of years. Now, China is standing in a very similar situation today. It seems to be a formidable empire. Who will win at the end? America and the West or China? We are in a race. We thank you. We hope to hear from you.